Let's welcome Attiyah Ganchi, an experienced occupational therapist with a deep passion for empowering parents and educators with the knowledge and tools they need to support children who may be struggling. Now, we will be speaking on the workshop that is coming for parents and teachers on children's development. Assalamu alaikum, Attiyah. Welcome to Prime Live, and Jazakallah so much for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be back.
Jazakallah so much. Can you please tell us about your experience as an occupational therapist?
So I graduated from BITS during COVID, which was quite an interesting year because at the time I had said I would never work with kids. I had an interest in adults. And because of COVID, I was forced to have two pediatric blocks. And honestly, from that, my love for pediatrics and kids truly blossomed. I then did 1 year of community service and then went into working in Fosleris, which was an amazing experience because I was at a school for kids with severe disability. And I think it was really eye-opening to see, even with such limited resources, the potential that the kids had. And from then on, I was afforded an opportunity to work in London, in Chelsea and Kensington, which was an eye-opening experience. And I think from that, I realized how much I love to learn more about people and the profession through learning what different countries are doing. So I moved on to the UAE and I've worked in Abu Dhabi for 1 year for school, and it has been a whirlwind of an experience. And I'm now moving on to Dubai. But while I'm in South Africa, I really wanted to take this opportunity to help parents and, really make a difference in helping them understand kids' development and what we can do together to try help them reach their maximal level of function.
Mm. And can you please tell us about what inspired to put together this workshop? And also, let's chat about the title. I think my child is struggling. Now what?
So I've been working with one of my partners. She's an occupational therapist in South Africa. Her name is Samia, and we both got chatting. And so many parents call us because teachers will complain and say, "Look, there's something wrong with this child. They acting out in class, and this child needs help because we just can't cope with this child." Or parents will call us and say, "I don't know what to do. I have a feeling that something is wrong. I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, and what should we do?" And that's where we come in and we really help parents. We want to help parents understand what to look out for, first of all, and then what to do if you do think your child has a problem, so that they can get access to the right services at the right time and to help them bridge those challenges that they face so that they can feel confident in school, confident at home, which will obviously lead to better functional outcomes for them.
Mm. And let's talk about who this workshop is actually targeted at.
So, this specific workshop, our target is parents. So, parents from kids of all ages, there's no start point or end age for OT, it goes on, as well as for teachers so that they can start understanding the signs and symptoms. And, we fully understand and can respect that teachers have it really hard, especially in South Africa where there's a lot of kids in a class. It's really hard for them to manage so many children and still pick out, these kids might be showing signs. But if they know what to look for or what tools are in place, it would help them to screen out kids and say, "Look, these are the kids we think would benefit from further intervention. How can we help these kids to make the school environment more adaptable for children?" Because we always quick to say, the kids need to change and kids need to adapt to the environment. But at the same time, the environment also needs to adapt for children of, who might have developmental delays, who might have any other childhood related disabilities. And of course, for parents, for them to make their home an environment that is suitable for their children to thrive, to give them coping strategies. We can understand a lot of parents might have other kids, they have responsibilities, but how to manage all of that together to give the best for your child and for your own mental health as a parent.
Mm. And what are some examples of red flag concerns that you hear from parents and educators?
Of course. So for an occupational therapist, we look at function, and our whole thing is what can we help people, not just children, but people as well, to function optimally on a day-to-day basis. So when we're looking at kids specifically for this workshop, we would look at what are the social factors that they're not coping with. So teachers will say this child is hitting somebody at school, or at home parents will say this child is biting their sibling. That could be a red flag. And previously, parents would always say, "Oh, kids were just labeled as naughty or lazy or that kind of thing." And we're saying Sometimes there's more to it than, just putting that label on, because if a child is hitting or punching, it might mean that their internal sensory systems aren't developed, and we can give them skills to prevent them from reaching to that point where the only thing they can use to regulate is punching or hitting. We could also look at other red flags such as feeding behaviors. So certain kids with autism or any other sensory difficulties, they might be almost fearful of certain foods because of the textures, or not having the oral motor skills they need to eat. And if a child isn't eating a good balanced meal, how do we expect them to have attention in class, or how do we expect them to play with other kids, because their bodies aren't getting what they need, because they don't have the sensory system in place to process those kind of foods. Of course, we also look, I mean, the two biggest roles for children is academics and play. Play for me more important so than academics, but with academics, if children aren't able to write, if they're unable to pay attention, they're unable to recall information, those are certain red flags that we can see what is the underlying factor that's impacting them and how can we help. And with regards to play, so the biggest job for me for kids is play. And it's so sad because in today's time, with obviously increased screen time and those kind of things, kids aren't developing the way they should be. And they're not able to reach their play goal milestones by certain ages. So we know by this age, a child should be doing this level of play, should be achieving this. And what can we do to help them do that? Because through play is how we as adults eventually learned assertive skills, how we learned commitment skills, how we learned all these things that make us who we are today, purely came from us playing as kids.
Mm, that's interesting. Now, briefly, can you please tell us what parents can expect if they were to take their child for an occupational therapist assessment?
Of course, so a lot of parents, when they hear OT or any form of assessment, it can be quite alarming, and nobody wants to label their child as having something wrong. I mean, we all want to see the best in our kids, and as occupational therapists, we want the exact same thing for your child. We want to find their underlying strengths and the challenges and see how we can make a difference. So, what you can expect is you'll contact your OT and she'll ask you, a group of questions to understand where you're coming from, because you do know your child best as a parent. And then we'll take your child and we'll do an assessment, which will include a range of standardized and non standardized assessments. So, standardized assessments are kind of given to every person in the same condition, and we can score them to see where they are on their level of performance. And we'll just play with them, we'll have some fun with them. But through doing that, we're actually picking up and understanding, okay, this is where we think there could be an issue, this is where we think there's room for improvement, or this is actually this child's strengths. So, how can we use those strengths in the right context to help that child? We'll then call you back and we'll give you feedback. And sometimes what OTs do as well is we'll go into the school if it is really needed, and of course with consent, to see how is the child coping in school, how are they doing on the playground, how are they doing in class, to really get that snapshot. And then we'll put together a plan of action for them, and we'll start with therapy. But of course it's important to remember that 30 minutes or 45 minutes of therapy a week isn't going to solve all your problems. It's a collaborative a collaborative project where we need to involve teachers, we need to involve you together, and we can really give the best for that child. I think also what creates a lot of taboo around therapy is that parents are scared of their child having a label. And occupational therapists do not diagnose children. We don't put labels on kids. Sometimes we'll often even treat a child without them having a diagnosis. We treating the underlying factors to help them reach their maximal function. And of course, we do work together with speech therapists, sometimes with doctors, with physios. It is a collaborative effect, but the beauty of OT for me is there's no side effect. If you send your child for OT, the only thing we can do is enhance skills. It's not like medication where there are side effects, and in certain cases, of course, kids need medication. But with OT, we can first try that as a more milder form of targeting any delay your child might have.
Mm, that's beautiful. Now, if you had to choose one success story through therapy, please share it with us.
That's a hard question because there's so many. And of course, there's some kids who we started that were nonverbal that I've seen in the last year. And by the end of therapy, we could actually get them to say one or two words and express themselves, play independently. But if I had to choose just one story, I had a little girl that I was seeing in the last year. And when you meet this child, or when you hear stories about this child, everybody was like, we don't know what to do about this child. We are at our wit ends with her. She's like that child that's always running out of class, not sitting during circle time, is in the corner. And initially, when we took her for therapy, it was a challenge. You know, she was that child who you would think she's fine, she's happy today. She'd start an activity, and just randomly, with no reason whatsoever, she would get up and go sit in the corner and just have a meltdown. She wouldn't want to do anything. And she would sometimes run out the therapy room, just burst out into tears. And, you know, by the end of therapy, it was like a completely different child that we had seen. And the only intervention we had was OT and speech therapy together. And by the end of the year, she was that child who was actually a role model to other kids. She was the child that would help console other kids when they were feeling anxious, who would be eager to come to therapy, who could express, look, this is what's worrying me. And that's because she had an underlying diagnosis of childhood anxiety. And that was what was stopping her from being able to engage in class, to be able to do what she needed to do. And we used interventions such as a routine chart. So initially with therapy, we would come in, and because she was so afraid of not knowing what activities we were going to do in therapy, that was what set her off, the fear of the unknown. And I mean, as adults, we can relate to that when we start a new job or something like that. So we would actually give her a visual schedule with pictures of these are the activities we're going to do. And by her being able to anticipate that, she was more willing to engage in the activities. And that's what really boosted her confidence. And then slowly, with time, we could reduce the schedule to just telling her this is what to expect. And then eventually, we got to a point where we would say, okay, two activities we're going to tell you, but the last one is going to be a surprise. And by the end of the year, you know, she was actually able to cope from just needing individual therapy sessions to having therapy sessions with 2 or 3 kids and engaging well with them. She was less fearful of losing a game. And you could just see that confidence in her spark. And for me, that's what therapy is about, finding where kids, you know, might be anxious. Oh, my friends are all writing and I can't write. My friends are spelling and I don't know how to spell. Those things, and especially, you know, hearing them get results, getting marks, those kind of pressures on kids really does cause a lot of anxiety in them. And we want to take them and show them their strengths, build and help them fix up what might not be where it needs to be, so that in the class they have that confidence, and that's how they thrive, that's how they grow, and that's the magic of it.
Hmm. Lastly, Attiyah, before I let you go, can you tell us when, the cost, and the time of this workshop?
Sure. So it is on the 2nd of August. I'm hosting it with my partner, Samia Arbi, and she's an occupational therapist practicing in South Africa. And it is in Johannesburg in Roosevelt Park. The first session is from 12 o'clock, and that's 250 Rand. But if you attend our second session, which is open to all parents, regardless of if you think your child has a problem or not, which is on play, I think we'll be chatting a bit more about that next week. But if you attend both sessions, it's 400 Rand. And to sign up, you can DM me on Instagram on OTIYAH, so OTIYYAH, or send me a message on 081 428 9568. And, you know, just chat to me and we can see how we can help, because that's what it's all about.
Mm. Jazakallah so much for joining us, Attiyah, and just for giving us, insight and educating us on this workshop for parent and teacher on, child development. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. Viewers at home, that was Attiyah Ganchi, who was just letting us know on the upcoming workshop for parents and teachers on child development. This was a very interesting conversation, but without wasting any time, we're going to head out to an ad break. We'll see you right after this.